Now that's weird. That's fucking weird. It wouldn't play.
Down here in BLM Plaza in Washington, D.C. You can see here behind me, and you would not believe what I was able to find. So I'm here, it's right in front of the White House, and you're able to see St. John's Church here, very famous church. This church is a church that has been used by some of the most well-known presidents. Every president for the last 200 years has come to this church. Some of the most well-known presidents, like Abraham Lincoln, have prayed here, have used this church as a place of prayer, a place of meditation. And here is something absolutely amazing. Very famously, Donald Trump came here with a Bible and stood outside of the church after the church had been burned. The church was burned by a movement, the BLM movement, in coordination with Antifa and anarchists, came to this church and set it on fire. You might have remembered seeing the footage if you were watching Fox News. Of course, no one else showed this footage, and it was memory hold almost immediately. But indeed, this church, historic, right across from the White House here. You can see the White House right over my shoulder there. There's the White House. This church was set on fire. So, they're burning down churches. This is a movement that burns down churches. The BLM movement burns down churches. They have done this, and they continue to burn all throughout America. You're seeing this in cities like Portland, Seattle, Kenosha, etc., etc. So this church, place of God, house of worship, has gone and changed the name outside of the church, right? So here's the church, has changed the name to Black Lives Matter. They took down the sign and put up a sign here. Well, I'm not sure if they took it down, but they certainly put this up to a giant Black Lives Matter. I believe that this was at one point a sign for the church, but nonetheless, this was where the president stood with the Bible after this movement had been cleared out and the church was set on fire. So this is just absolutely stunning for someone like me, a Christian, to see. The reason why is that the church should believe, one, that all lives matter, because all lives are created by God and have value, right, by their just intrinsic creation. And then two, to see the property here on such a historic church to be used to send a message that is so strangely political and controversial in its current form, as in the movement that burnt down the church now suddenly gets billing right in front of the church. The same movement that lit this place on fire, and were it not for DC's finest, would have burned to the ground. It's a very old building, you can see. This would have burned to the ground, broke in and lit on fire. Now it gets billing right in front of the church. That's shocking. I mean, truly shocking. We call that capitulation. We call that coercion. We call that subjugation. We call that using power and control, which is what so much of this movement is about. Has very little to do with Black lives, especially these days. It has everything to do with power and control. Go ahead and check in with David Dorn, or check in with the people who are getting their businesses burned down and see if this movement has anything to do with Black lives when they're burning down Black businesses, and Black people are losing their life at the hands of this movement. And then you have a church that is being lit on fire, but is nonetheless standing up with a sign outside and saying BLM. It's wild. It has no place in the house of God, and this is just a egregious and sad thing to see. It's such a historic property. I guess on a positive note, because I like leaving things on a positive note, I guess the church is still standing. And the only people you have to thank for that are our police, our firefighters here in Washington, D.C., who were immediately on the scene to prevent this property and these beautiful golden crosses and this beautiful historic building from going up in ashes. So there you go, America. Something you didn't know and you won't see on the news of BLM Plaza.
Wow.
I'm walking down here in